they called me together and she said, Sam is being really brave and he wants to tell you that he has a plan. He knows how he wants to do it, and he has made the decision to end his life. I think I feel him more. I think I could have disappeared into grief. And if I didn't have other children, I probably would have. But I decided that, my way to survive, and everyone does it differently, was to turn some of that pain into purpose. I didn't do it to tell Sam's story, right? I wanted to help change the system that failed him. And it didn't fail them because they wanted to fail him. It failed him because they didn't know a better way to do it.
Hi, I'm Heidi Baskfield, and I'm the executive director of Speak Our Minds and the producer of the Speak Our Minds podcast. And today with me is my guest, Laura Love, who's a licensed clinical social worker. She's a child mental health advocate with strong ties to work in children's hospitals, and a mom. And maybe more importantly, my very good friend. Laura, welcome to our podcast series.
Thanks for having me.
We're talking about a subject that a lot of people identify as difficult, and that is suicide and suicide prevention. And the reason why we're doing this series is we're talking about the value of having the healthcare community address and really embrace suicide prevention work in all the different ways. And this is like a really deeply personal conversation for you in particular, even though this is your professional life now, but we're here to talk about the personal side of this. So I want to talk about your son, Sam, and why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about him?
Yeah, gosh, Sam was pure light, and he was funny, he was curious, he was empathetic. I think he was the kind of kid who he noticed when someone else was sitting alone, and he was the one who went and sat beside him. We adopted him from Russia when he was a little under 2 years old, and he joined our family in December of 2010 and was amazing.
When you think back to when you first started noticing some mental health struggles, what were you seeing? What were you beginning to identify? And how old was he when these first sort of came online?
So he was 12 when I first started noticing, and the signs were actually really subtle. It was stomach aches. He had trouble sleeping. He brought up that he felt like he was getting bullied. He was feeling isolated with some friends that had been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
He had the sense of just feeling othered. And I think it was more of when I look back, it was like a sense that the world felt heavier for him than it should have been for a 12-year-old.
And once you started recognizing those signs, what happened next?
I mean, again, looking back, hindsight is so interesting, isn't it? But like so many parents, I'm sure, I assumed that we wrapped him up with a lot of love. He had a lot of love from our family, from his brother and sister, from friends, from grandparents. He had stability. He had a great home. He had summer camps and schools, and he had access to care. He had a therapist and resources. We kind of doubled down. We looked at medication management. We went all in. I said, I'm landing in the middle of this. He's like, okay. But I think during that, I learned just how invisible and complex depression can be, especially in boys who really don't have the words to describe what's going on in them.
And feeling like they're carrying things and not being able to talk about it.
Trying to be little men, right? And they're not. And so we don't give them words to describe when something hurts like that.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's a point at which for Sam things reached a real crisis. And can you describe what happened at that time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had heard of a technology called Bark, and it allowed you parents with your child's approval. You had to do it in partnership, but to install Bark on their phones or their computers. And it really sort of monitored for things that we should be able to talk about as a family. So bullying, suicide ideation, any kind of, things that would raise concern. It didn't monitor everything, but it gave you alerts. And I was going to bed one night and got an alert that he was, it comes in warning, and was looking up suicidal ideation. And his dad and we co-parented, and he was at his dad's house that week and called his dad and he was asleep. It's a little delay when it comes in. And the next morning, he took him to school and had a conversation, asked the questions. And Sam denied that it was for him, said it was for a friend. And I was really fortunate that he went to a school where there was a really strong mental health counselor there
Yeah.
who, when I first started noticing, really got to know her. And I called her that morning and I said, it might be nothing, but my mama instinct is saying that this is more serious than he's telling us. And to her credit, she went and got him out of class and she brought him in. They called me together and she said, Sam is being really brave and he wants to tell you that he has a plan. He knows how he wants to do it. And he has made the decision to end his life. And I said, okay, buddy, I'm going to head over there now and we're gonna go get some support. And so I drove over to his school and his dad met me there. And I actually called you and I just said, what do I do? I don't even know. This went so fast. I don't even know what to do. And you gave me some really wise advice. And we went to the ER and we walked in. It was well before lunchtime. That was our first sort of entrance into a mental health crisis.
I mean, I remember it very clearly. And I can't think of anything more terrifying as a parent. And those moments where it's like, I'll do whatever it takes, whatever I need to do, like bring all the things into the equation, help us, please. What was it like when you got to the hospital? Like, what happened? What was that experience when you got there?
It was just overwhelming. I've been to the hospital a lot. Right? You have 3 kids. You spend a lot of time at the hospital for broken bones or tonsils, but I had never been for a mental health crisis. And it felt so like an out-of-body experience. I think there was focus on liability and paperwork, and he was changed into maroon scrubs so he could be identified different than the other kids. And he was, for his own safety, I know this now, but he was stripped of everything, phones, jewelry, and we were separated from him so they could do an assessment. And it was just all happening so fast. And we were trying to call people and figure out, how to get a hold of his therapist and other family members and siblings. And I think there was so much focus on liability and paperwork and not enough in those early moments of support and connection and communication. And it felt like the system, looking back now, it's designed to treat a crisis and not a person.
Yeah.
And that's where I keep, again, hindsight, but we have to move towards human-centered care. And it was not that.
And that's what's so valuable about this conversation as we're continuing to partner with our friends in the healthcare community to say it's not enough just to do the paperwork and to ask specific questions. It's all about the experience that is being created for families and these patients. And it's notable to me also when you talk about things that feel maybe process oriented and even subtle in the way that healthcare creates systems and processes, that you put kids in scrubs, period. You put them in a different color. You separate them from their families at a time when things are really scary. And on a treatment side, these are things that make logical sense and fit into a very specific process queue. But for those living it, that does not feel good.
No, and it adds trauma to trauma. And for, a 12-year-old, he's stripped of sort of everything that he knows. And we're not in the room with them. There's no access to even a TV or calming, he didn't have fidget toys or warm blankets. I mean, it was sort of sitting there and asked to write a safety plan, which I do think helped, at least gave him some voice and some control. And it was really a fine line. Is he ready to be hospitalized or is he safe enough to go home with us? And the truth is the beds were full.
As is normal. Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time, right? I just assumed you come in with a life-threatening illness or a medical emergency, they find a bed for you. So it didn't even occur to me that we wouldn't have an option to have a bed. And they were really honest about it. He may be in that ER for 3, 5, 7 days. They couldn't tell me what that meant. And they were asking a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to, right? I mean, they're questions they need to ask, but I didn't know the answer. Is he safe enough to go home? Well, I didn't even know he had a plan, 2 hours ago.
Right. So talk through then what led you to go home.
So ours were with our clinician was all telehealth because we were in one of the remote locations for the hospital. And, it was, I want to say 9, 10, 11 hours later. It was well into the night that they gave us a choice, honestly. They said, we can't make this for you. If you feel like he's safe enough for you to take him home, here are some things that you're going to need to do. And they gave me a list. And his dad and I made the decision with his voice, like, what do you want to do? He didn't know. I don't know, Mom. I don't know what to do. Do I have to stay here? And I was like, yeah, buddy, you do. And he's like, no, then I want to leave. And so we left. And I remember it was snowing and it was cold and we were driving home. And I was like, oh, God, I don't even know what to do with this now.
Your whole world. Totally
Whole world. And so he slept by my bed, on suicide watch. We removed all medication. We removed all knives. I put a bell on the door so in case I fell asleep, I could hear him. And the next morning, and thankfully he was still asleep, we got on the phone and we started making calls.
How did you know who to call?
I mean, thankfully, I put resources around him when he was feeling sad. So I called a lot of, the therapists or the people I knew in the system who could helpfully point me to a direction. I called my insurance company. I called friends. There isn't a central point, right? There isn't like a resource of help parents figure this next step out, that you just figure it out. And so we made a lot of calls and we set up a lot of interviews trying to get him in a partial hospitalization program because we were told an inpatient could be might have to wait a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I knew he needed something faster than that. And so his dad and I started going to literally visit every open partial hospitalization program that was available. And his stepmom started dealing with the insurance company. And my husband was, watching him without his eyes off of him. And we started making a plan.
So then sort of fast forward a little bit. He gets into partial hospitalization. What do you notice or what is the experience that comes as a result?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that at the moment when I brought him home and I knew we had a place for him to go, I also knew that the follow-up care just didn't match his level of pain. I did not hear from the hospital. No one called to check. And I think that's where our system was breaking down, right? It's the handoff between crisis stabilization and long-term connection. Families need to know that they're not walking out of this hospital into a void. They need to know they have support.
What do you think would have made a difference in that moment? Had you gotten a call? What did you need to hear? What did you need to be able to ask, do you think?
I think when I walked out, I mean, I had an after visit summary like you would when you had a child, right? It did include a safety plan, but I needed a roadmap. You're going to wake up in the morning and here's what I need you to do. I need you to get on the phone. I need you to call these places. I need you to call his school. I need you to talk to siblings and I need you to talk to them in this way. I need you to take him away from anything that will be stressful in his life and surround him with support in a way that he can handle it. I needed a roadmap and I didn't have it. And so we made it up, right? We made it up as we went. And I am sure we made a lot of mistakes, but we did the best we could with what we knew, which wasn't very much.
So then kind of keep walking us through this story and what happens.
So he went to a partial hospitalization program. And this is the other thing. There's a lot of acronyms in healthcare, but there's, I think, 3 times as many in mental health. I heard the word PHP and IOP and IPU, and I was like, what are these people talking about? Like, I truly didn't even know what that meant. But now I do. So he went to a partial hospitalization program or a PHP, and he was there for 6 weeks, 7 days a week from 8 to 3, even on weekends. And for us, it was a lifeline. Like it was a place where I think he could just sort of sink into all the big feelings that he had with other peers that were going through not exactly what he was going through, but the language was common enough that they could share it. And he had a therapist and a team of people around him and around us that could walk us through what to expect each day. And he really thrived. And he went into an IOP when he got out, an intensive outpatient.
Yeah.
For also those that don't know acronyms. His was virtual, which didn't work for him. They didn't have space. And remember, this was close to COVID time. So they just didn't have the in-person space for him. And the IOP, he was a kiddo who had ADHD, and sitting on a screen after living through COVID was just not for him.
Right.
So we put some more support around him. with therapy and medication management, and we changed his school system with his voice and really tried to create an environment for him at home collectively that was what he needed. And at that point, he was able to use the words to tell us what he needed. And he started advocating for other kids. It was this really interesting and kind of beautiful change in him where Bark actually, I met one of the founders and she reached out to me and I told her our story at an event she was speaking at. She's like, would Sam be willing to share a story? And I was like, I'll ask him.
Right.
And he was 13 at the time. And I was like, his trouble sometimes articulating how his day at school was. I'm not sure how this is going to go for him.
Yeah.
But they flew a camera crew in and spent the day with him, and he was amazing. And they asked him, which I wasn't in the room, but I heard it after he died. And she's like, what do you want other kids to know? He's like, I want them to know that there's help. I want them to know that if you just are brave enough to tell your mom and dad or your family what's going on, you can find help. I don't want any kid or any family to have to go through what we went through. And then a hospital called and they were doing a series that you know too well on kids boarding in the ER. And they knew how brave he was being, if he'd be willing to talk about it. And I said, buddy, it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
We can change your name. They don't need to use your name. They don't need to see your face. Do you want to tell your story? And he's like, I do. I want to tell my story. And we did change his name. And they were so wonderful and sensitive around it because it is still a stigmatized issue. He spent the day with the photographer and he just had the best time feeling like he was in this position where he could help other kids. And that was the fall of 22. So really only 6 months, 6 to 8 months after I had gotten that first call from his school counselor.
And so in those moments, you're feeling like, okay, like things are getting better. This might be okay.
100%. He was going to sleepaway camp. He was becoming a junior counselor in a summer camp, all on his own requests. He started taking photography lessons and music lessons. He carried this camera around all the time. I mean, he would volunteer for Food for Thought. I mean, he was truly like, we all were like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
And I remember taking him in April. He was finishing up 8th grade. And I said, buddy, we're getting ready you're going to go away for the summer, for a lot of the summer. And you haven't been to your therapist in a couple months and we need to do your medication management anyway. So what if let's just knock him out. Let's just get this, he's like, okay, I don't really need it, but fine, I'm in.
Right.
Yeah. Typical,
Yeah.
at that point, 14-year-old. So his therapist saw him and walked out and she's like, I've never seen this kid so happy. Like, he is like a different kid. It's like, I know, I don't know. She's like, what is it? I was like, I don't know. I don't think it's one thing, right? I think it's a lot of things that you put together to create support. A human going through this. And she's like, I'm just blown away. Same thing. We went to his RN that's worked with medication for him since he was 6. And she said the same thing. She's like, oh my God, I was just blown over by
Yeah. Yeah. So feeling good. This is like, we're confident, we're looking forward, like all the things. What happens next?
I went on an annual college girls trip and Sam was going to stay with my husband and his stepbrother was coming in. They were going hiking and he and we had date nights a couple of times a month. So we had our date night on Wednesday night and had the best time, watched the show, made tacos, and he was talking about his weekend. Kissed him goodnight, and I left early Thursday morning for my girls' trip in Arizona. And he went that night with his dad and his brother to see a music performance, took a bunch of pictures, went to dinner. They had a great time. Came home, did his homework, which wasn't his favorite thing to do, with my husband, and they joked and laughed and talked about, what the day would be like on Friday, what the plan was. Went to bed and Keith let him sleep in because he didn't help me. He had a late start on that Friday. Walked in and he had died by suicide.
So I can't think of a more shocking. I mean, it's shocking no matter what, but like given where even those who are providing mental health support to you and him were with this, like the stunning nature of that.
We were all shocked. Like, he was doing so well, it seemed.
Now looking back, did they ask him, like, when he came in? I mean, I'm assuming it's like, he looks like he's doing good. Like, we don't even need to ask the questions because he's fine. Do you think it would have mattered?
She did ask him.
She did.
My husband called me. I was in Arizona, and it was the hardest call I'm sure he ever had to make, and couldn't even understand what he was saying. Like, it was so not what I didn't even imagine something like this.
Yeah.
And I hung up from him and immediately called her. And I was like, "What?" Because I wasn't in session with him. And she's like, I mean, if I was the most shocked, she was probably the second most shocked. We talked. I asked. Like, there was not a sign. There's no intent. There was no means. There's no plan that he shared.
And so that's what makes all of this so hard, is how do we do this in a way that catches? How do we do this in a way? And, Sam, as you live every day, it is out of this space of honoring Sam's life, because what a beautiful, incredible kid. And he and you and every other kid and family who have this experience deserve a better outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I did ask him one time because we did the numbers, right? Like, even after he got out, I would say, because he didn't like to talk about feelings. I don't know many teenage boys that do, but I would say, okay, 0 to 10, like, where are you right now? And I just sporadically say it. And if he was under a 5, I leaned in. I kind of landed in the middle of it a little bit more and like, tell me more. And one time he was a 2. And I said, buddy, this worries me. Like, did we need to go get more support? It was nighttime. And he's like, Mom, I'm not going back there. I'm not going back to that hospital. And the problem is there aren't a lot of other places that you can go.
Yeah.
You spend the night next to him and you watch him all night and and then he seems fine again. And you get them through the crisis because his experience in that hospital while they were keeping him safe, it wasn't loving, it wasn't supportive. There wasn't a feeling of let's build this support system around this kid who's really struggling and don't make him feel like a prisoner in scrubs or prison gear being watched. Let's support him and make him feel like he's got a village around him. He didn't want to go back.
And I think that's such a critical share point. It's not easy for you to talk about this. So Laura, thanks for doing this with us, because I think it continues. I mean, as we're working with all these hospitals and these providers, they want to figure this out. The desire is, one, there's an open articulation of how scared a lot of these providers are, right? Especially those that don't have mental health training per se. That's not their sort of area of expertise. And I'll come back to that specifically, but say more about, since then, how did supporting Sam through all of this, the loss, how's it reshaped your life and your work? What are you doing now that you weren't doing before?
Yeah, I mean, in so many ways. Like, I think he's with me now more than me, as a teenager. He didn't really want to hang out with his mom all that much, although he kind of did. But I think I feel him more. I think I could have disappeared into grief. And if I didn't have other children, I probably would have. But I decided that, my way to survive, and everyone does it differently, was like, to turn some of that pain into a purpose. And so I went back to graduate school at, I don't know, 52 years old. And I became a social worker. Now I'm a licensed therapist. I didn't do it just to tell Sam's story, right? I wanted to help change the system that failed him.
Yep.
And it didn't fail him because they wanted to fail him.
Right.
Failed him because they didn't know a better way to do it. And so everything I do now, I think, as a therapist, as a parent, as a mental health advocate, as an intern when I worked at children's hospitals trying to change the way that we work with families and mental health crisis, is making sure that families don't face that same loneliness
Yeah.
in this crisis. And even though I can't bring him back, I think that even if we just change one life, right, we make it different for one family because we as a hospital system figure out a way to do it differently, it's worth it.
Absolutely. We talk about, this awareness and this commitment to changing things for other families. What are some things in emergency departments that can be done and structured differently that creates more of a feeling of support?
I did field work. I had to do about 500 hours of field work my second year, and I chose a children's hospital, and which was great because it was hard, but it allowed me to sit in those rooms again, but on this time as part of the team. And I think the biggest shift happens when our hospital teams start to see families as partners and not problems. Families remember the tone of your voice. They remember that look in your eye. They remember all the way that you make them feel, far more than your clinical notes. I've seen the difference when a clinician walks in and simply says, "You're not alone. Can I walk with you to get something to drink?" To the parent, "Let you take a break. We're going to stay here and take care of your child. We'll keep them safe." That is trauma informed care in action, right? It's creating toolkits, I think, that translate empathy into protocol. Compassion shouldn't just depend on like who's on shift that day, right? Training for our workforce is so key. And they're not showing up in that way because they're bad people. They're good people.
Right.
They just haven't been trained in trauma informed, family focused care.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned earlier too, like things like making the call afterward and checking in is like huge.
It's huge. And when I, again, spent a lot of time diving in from the family experience and not to be a part of the problem, but how can we be a part of the solution?
Yeah.
To take my clinical experience and my lived experience and owning a business for 25 years so I can see how systems work is how do we do it? And I look at it in three buckets. It's the first is communication, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, parents, children are terrified. So they're also trying to appear very calm so the child doesn't see fear. And that's a hard dual role. And families aren't asking for perfection. They're asking to be seen. They're asking to be heard. They're asking to be included in decisions. And so when our providers know how to communicate openly and consistently, I think it restores this sense of safety, right? The safety that's the foundation of healing for families. The simple act of teaching clinicians to say, "We're in this together, right? We're in this together and I'm here with you until we figure out a path forward."
Hmm.
So I would say the first is just so basic, it's communication. The second is the physical space. Need to think about our physical space, right? Think about hospitals. They make them colorful for children, right? And warm and loving, and they get toys and they can walk out into rooms where they play games. Not the case when you're in a mental health crisis. And every touch point in a hospital, it's a chance to notice something, right? It's the mural on the wall in a mental health room. It's the colorful therapeutic bean bags that a kid can sink into. It's having that space that feels warm and loving and accepting so they can see it. And I think the third is this comfort. It's like, what do we do to give our kids comfort? Instead of stripping them of everything, how do we create tools, right? Comfort tools, sensory books, therapeutic, like meditation guidelines, calming cards, warm blankets, weighted blankets, big, bags that if they need and they have sensory issues, they can stretch out in them. Give them the tools while they are waiting in the ER for sometimes up to 12 hours at a minimum that they start healing. Hospitals, ERs do not need to be a place where it's only triage. You can start healing in those spaces.
That's a big switch. I mean, that's like
Big switch.
big transition. Some like simple in one way and very complicated when you think about all the different layers that reinforce it not being that way.
Because prevention, it's not a department, right?
No.
Culture.
Right.
Prevention is not a department. It is a culture. And if a young person feels like they can talk about their pain and their emotional pain as easily as they can talk about their physical pain with a team that supports them and surrounds them and does not make them feel othered,
Yeah.
we've already started saving lives.
Or there's a unique also component to your story in how you're keeping Sam alive, and how Sam continues to support other kids and families. Can you talk about what that looks like and share about the Kindness Fund?
Sam was adopted from Russia, as I mentioned, on December 1st. And when he died, we started the Sam Aiden Kindness Fund. And it was really started from this idea that love doesn't end, right? It just evolves. And so every December 1st on his gotcha day, we invite people to do random acts of Samness, really small acts of kindness that are meant to just ripple outwards. And our family gives people $100 bills and tells them to go out and give goodness out in the world and share it in whatever way they see fit. And then our foundation supports grants for youth mental health programs. So every project carries a bit of Sam's spirit. It's playful, it's kind, it's full of heart. To date, we've given out about $100,000. And it's our way of saying that kindness is prevention and action is prevention. And Sam's story, it still has work to do in this world. This year, we're taking it up a notch. Because of the story I shared about the lack of support in children's hospitals, and this community has been like teary thinking about it. But we sent out a request about a month ago, our whole family did, and we worked with Children's Hospital Colorado to come up with safe, supportive items that kids can have in the ER when they're in a mental health crisis. And their child life team was amazing and gave us the ability to create a Kind Like Sam wish list on Amazon. And my entire office, if you could see it right now, is full. It is full of weighted blankets and sensory toys and books and mindfulness and games that they can play while they're sitting and waiting. And we're collecting all of those. And on December 1st, in addition to giving out grants and giving people the $100 bills to go do random acts of kindness, our plan is to go deliver these to the mental health emergency departments at children's hospitals so the kids will not be alone and they'll feel like there are people outside of those walls and inside of those walls who care. And so that is our goal. And I don't know where it will go. I think there's more. I know there's more, but that's where we are today. It will be 3 years next May since he died. And our goal as a family, his brother and sister and dad and bonus parents and grandparents, were committed to making other kids' experience a little different than his. He would like that.
I know that. Yeah. Well, we're going to be excited to share out the information for those who want to contribute and get involved because it is an incredibly powerful and easy way to make a difference and to honor all the amazing things about Sam and your family. Laura, thanks so much for doing this with me, for sharing the story, for talking about this, for the work that you're doing. It matters.
Thank you. You think some days you're like so strong and some days you're like, it just hits you like a ton of bricks. And I think that's the thing about grief is it comes in waves and you just have to learn to ride the waves a little bit.
Well, you set an amazing example. And again, we can't thank you enough. There are going to be lives in places you can't even fathom that are touched and impacted by this story. So, Laura,
Thank you.